Okay, my clock went to 5:30, so. Yeah, at this time, we'd like to call to order the City of New Bern's Board of Adjustment meeting for Thursday, November 22nd, 2024. Could we have a roll call?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. We're going to start with board member, give me just a moment, actually, I apologize. I got my roll call sheet. Apologize, Mr. Chairman. So we're going to start with board member James Ferguson. Here. And board member Kathleen Marty.
Here.
Chairman Tim Tabak.
Here?
Board member Sandra Gray. And let the record show she is not in attendance. Board member Eric Thompson. Let the record show he is not in attendance. Board member Barbara Sampson. Let the record show she is not in attendance. Board member Leslie Allen.
Here.
And board member Ryan Blanche.
Here.
All right, and Mr. Chairman, we do have a quorum.
Sounds good. And at this time, we'd like to call for a pledge of allegiance, please. Yeah, pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we don't have a whole lot of folks in the audience. I'm not going to go through the whole process that we don't normally do here, but I will say good evening. Thanks for coming back to see us again. And please make sure your cell phone is off, and that's for board members also. This is a quasi-judicial hearing and operates very similar to a court hearing. And we'll move on from that point. We always ask folks to volunteer for boards. We all are volunteers, city appointments, and I know there's some positions open with the city, and maybe we can have some folks step forward and go from there.
Including Ward 6 Alderman.
Good point. I had to remember that, but the Ward 6 Alderman is an open position at the current time.
It's still open?
I think it is.
Way to go, Alderman. All right.
And moving on. We first have a decision that we approved at the last meeting in reference to the Craven Technical Institute. And I think, do we have any discussion in reference to that approval? I think we have two board members that were here.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, okay. If not, we need a motion to approve the application as we discussed.
The written decision.
The written decision.
I make the motion that we approve the written decision for the.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Okay, and the second is in reference to a special use application that we continued. We had some concern at the last meeting. I've got my notes here in reference to if we actually had the requested information necessary to make a decision in reference to number 2 on our decision process about the application being complete. And I think we also had some doubt with board members about adjoining property and challenges. I think there is a new document that we have here that I think Kendrick may discuss, and that may solve part of our number 5 challenge with it, whether it's a public necessity or not. And I guess, Kendrick, could you move?
Before we do that, Mr. Chair, since we're reconvening the public hearing, we may want to re-swear the witnesses.
Okay, we can do that, sure. At this time, is there anybody that plans to speak? I know Kendrick will you speak again tonight? Okay, so let's go ahead and go through and say, do you all solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yeah, thank you. And I guess Kendrick's going to go first to talk. Yes, sir.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll go ahead and do the presentation first. Mr. Mogheer, if you'll just give me just a moment, I'll work through that. Seeing that there's no public here as well, I'm going to go straight.
Sure, yeah, perfect.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, and good evening to the board. So tonight, we are reconvening that previous item from the October 24th date here, and this was pursuant to the Greyhound bus station item. So this is, again, special use permit 002-961-2024, and the location for this actual proposal is at 2406 Neuse Boulevard, New Bern, North Carolina. The proposed use is a bus station. And the request summary here, the applicant is for the corporation, Mogheer LLC. The total acreage is 0.8. The parcel identification number is 8-029-136. And the zoning district is commercial 3 or C-3. Okay, this first map here that you see is the buffer map. Let me make sure I didn't miss a map. I apologize. Okay, I did miss a map. So the first map is actually a vicinity map. I apologize, the clicker is giving me some issues. But this is the vicinity map for the actual parcel. It's outlined there by this greenish turquoise color. And the second map is a buffer map here. Once again, you see the outlining, but the buffer is taken to surround the property for 100 feet. This is our requirement for the land use ordinance for the mail notices that should be received by any parcels that are within that 100-foot buffer. And that's followed by the aerial map. And again, it's highlighted there. That just gives you an idea and a picture of what is on the ground. And lastly here is the zoning map, which reflects that commercial 3 or C-3 zoning district for the property. And additional considerations, staff confirms that the application submitted was deemed to be complete. And then also we can confirm that the request is within its jurisdiction in accordance with the table of permissible uses. This is probably the time, Mr. Chairman, where I'll go ahead and express that the information recently received actually prior to this meeting from NCDOT. This came specifically from the director. And pursuant to the previous meeting, there was a question about, I believe it's number 3 on the application, which asks about the impacts to surrounding properties, and then also talks about necessarily it can be either or for public necessity. In this event, the NCDOT wanted to essentially ask how they could assist in the matter and express from their corner what their involvement is. So they actually purchased this route, and essentially I guess a bidder, being Greyhound, is the one that has bid on said route, so they proceed to use that. They're the only ones, from what I understand. This information came directly from an NCDOT representative. The director went ahead and put together a letter that's before all of you, which I've added. It wasn't in the initial packet send out, but it's now physically present. If you need a minor recess, or if you all have reviewed it already and feel comfortable to proceed, that's more than fine if you needed a minor recess to read it. But ideally, in the short gist, the letter is to represent the public necessity factor for this bus station. And they give you some information pertaining to all the different places that they use said service or use said routes for citizens of whichever city or place that it's going to be used for.
And Mr. Chair, just for identification purposes, Mr. Stanton is referencing a letter from the State of North Carolina's Department of Transportation dated November 21st, 2024, and this letter is signed by a Brennan Fuqua, MPA, PE, PMP, the NCDOT Integrated Mobility Division Director.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have to have, need to have this admitted into evidence, or did that?
I think the applicant would like for this document to be admitted into the record. Is that correct, Mr. Mogheer? Yes. He's indicating yes.
Okay. And I provided a copy to the applicant as well, so once he comes up to speak, you can interact to admit it into evidence or ask that question.
So do we need to go for a motion to do that now, or should we wait till a later date? Or
you don't have to entertain a motion necessarily to admit this into evidence. If there's no objection from anyone else, I don't see anyone. And if no one has any concerns about its admissibility, you can receive it into evidence, and you can take a moment at this time to review the letter in its entirety.
Okay, would everybody like an opportunity to read through, or we?
I've read it.
I've read it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we're good, thank you.
And the last slide here is just the site plan that you've previously seen. This is just a layout for what's being proposed. So I will leave it on this screen, but is there any questions from the board at this time that I can take?
Real quick, Kendrick.
Yes, sir.
This is not currently a bus station. This is currently a closed gas station, right?
Yes, it initially was open, and this was prior to the applicant understanding that the use required a special use permit for the property. It was previously established at MLK, but he's transitioned to this property and just kind of thought that that carried over. So we initially had a call, and we had to go out and begin the enforcement principle, but he's trying to remedy by actually obtaining the special use permit.
So is it currently,
Currently, it technically has no use.
but is
So
it currently equipped to be the bus station as proposed, or are there changes that are going to occur after this hearing?
That would most likely occur after the fact, but the applicant does essentially give into this site plan and express that he will abide by the site plan to make it to the point where it needs to be. He's been working with myself and the assistant city attorney, as well as, the building department to assess some of the concerns there with the canopy, I believe. And he's been proactive, if I will, in trying to make these changes to make sure they're in accordance to what plan you would approve today.
And it's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there is no other bus station in New Bern. This is the bus station, right?
That's my understanding as well. A lot of people have raised concerns about it being removed. I can tell you, I know you weren't at the previous meeting, Ms. Sampson had given a statement in reference to this being the only bus station that was active in this area, from what I understood.
Right. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So Kendrick, you said the DOT purchased this route?
Yes, sir, and I was not aware that as to their involvement. The gentleman, the representative that I spoke with was a Mr. Hart Evans, but I believe his first name is John, and he expressed that they purchased this route, and then essentially it's offered to bid, and the only ones that bid on the route were the Greyhound bus station. So in theory, or in essence, I guess, they just allowed them to kind of do their thing, is how he referenced it to me. But he's noticing that they may need to actually take up more involvement when it comes to some of these things being established. And this is one of those scenarios. So he had reached out to the assistant director, Mr. Robert Goff, left a voicemail, and then expressed that he wanted to figure out if they could be of assistance in getting this to move forward. So
The DOT would purchase the route from each property owner who,
I'm not certain who they may have purchased it from. He just alluded to that it was purchased and it's essentially through NCDOT as a route. He didn't give me the full logistics, but basically Greyhound operates underneath that route, if that makes sense.
to be honest, it's unclear to me, who received the money from the DOT.
I absolutely understand. I did not receive that information from them, and unfortunately, I don't have a definitive answer on who may have received it. The only thing I could really speak to is they're state agencies. I'm assuming it had to have gone to through some exchange. I just don't know the particular.
City Attorney, I believe we have the subpoena power that we could subpoena a representative from DOT to answer these questions, right?
That is a very good question, Mr. Ferguson. I don't know if that's the most efficient way for you to get the information that you might need, but if this body were to determine that you need clarifying information, there may be methods that can be utilized to gather that information for you, short of using subpoena power.
Thank you.
Do we have any additional questions?
I guess I would like to question why we would need to know who received the monies, if that's what Ryan is asking.
I took it, and Ryan can answer, but I took it as just, a curiosity, but, it's apparent that DOT used federal funds to purchase the route on reliance that there is and maybe this is a question for the applicant, but on reliance that there be a bus station here, and if this is the only bus station, then this kind of puts the route at jeopardy, is at least how I read this letter. So, I mean, that's kind of, I'd be curious on that point, but I think, I tend to agree that, curiosity for the sake of curiosity, but
I'm not,
the reality is.
I'm not sure that it
Yeah.
has something to do with our decision as to this going forward.
I wouldn't necessarily say that that would interact with your decision. What I would express is that you have a state agency that is referencing their, motive necessarily, or their involvement in this actual item, which they're deeming as a public necessity in the means of a public transportation for the citizens of New Bern. So when you look at the criteria, which is on that application, you have the option essentially between like the appraiser's report to reflect that it's not going to injure any values or abutting property values versus the or factor, which is or it's a public necessity. So you can go off of either one. I would deem, and staff would say, that this is credible because it comes from an expert, essentially expert agency, which would be North Carolina Department of Transportation. So that would be where the board's considerations really need to be relied on.
And Mr. Chair, in the spirit of being helpful, I agree with Mr. Staten that the relevant criteria for you to focus your attention on at this point would be number 5. The use would not substantially reduce the value of adjoining or abutting property, or that the use is a public necessity, and that or is significant. The comma in the or is very significant. You can find either one of the criteria on either side of that punctuation. And the information being provided to you tonight may have a tendency to suggest that the use as being proposed is a public necessity. Now, it's within your purview to weigh the credibility of the evidence and how to assign any additional weight to the evidence. But if you find that it's competent, material, and substantial by someone who has professional credentials from a state agency who is knowledgeable in transportation matters, seeing as they're the Department of Transportation, then you certainly can bear that information in mind.
Yeah, I'll just say, I think, and just for the record, I'm looking at this same letter that was just put into evidence from the Mobility Division Director at DOT, and based on the alphabet soup after his name, the credentials, and then the information presented, I don't think it, I would take this as, in lieu of expert testimony, but expert evidence to suggest this would be a public necessity. So I'm ready to vote for it, but we can hear from the applicant.
Yes, sir.
Can I ask you a question, Ms. Jamie?
Yes, sir.
So on number 5, are we saying that if it's a public necessity, then you don't consider anything else? Or does that trump everything before the comma?
If I'm understanding your question correctly, you want to know if you don't find, if there's no evidence in the record about a reduction in value of adjoining properties.
If there is, I'm sorry.
If there is.
If there is, and it's a public necessity.
Okay. If it's a public necessity, you satisfy the criteria.
You do?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
It's
thank
either
you.
or.
So one reason I think we continued the meeting was due to the lack of information from an appraiser that may or may not have helped our decision process, and that we didn't have an engineering information in reference to lighting from a safety standpoint. I think those are two of our biggest considerations. So if it does become a public necessity and that makes the application complete due to the letter, is it possible for us to add a condition as we discuss things that may help solve some of the safety challenges that we potentially talked about at the last meeting? With that?
Well, it's my I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry.
You're good. I'm just curious if we need to stop or if we can, add in, lighting, traffic, or any of the other topics that we heard at the last meeting that may or may not have been a challenge.
So just to give Jamie time to think about that question, to
Yes, sir.
verify with Kendrick, this is for the special use permit, and it's my understanding the site plan still has to go through the approvals within the city for the development of I mean, I think there are issues with the canopy, and then potential lighting would be addressed at the staff level. Is that right?
That is correct on that portion, but I will tell you that DRC does take place prior to this actual meeting. So the DRC is essentially, we've gone through that point, but our building department is thoroughly working with Mr. Mogheer on fixing the issues with the canopy. Also the assistant city attorney has helped in that reference as well to make sure that we are addressing any issues there.
Because I'm looking at specifically the memo from you dated October 22nd, 2024 from the DRC, where it says, provide lighting plan if applicable.
Okay.
And so is that, I mean, if it deals with a safety concern, if applicable, is that if applicable under the city's code of ordinances, if a condition of the special use permit, what is the play there?
So the applicability factor kind of comes into play depending on what the applicant is actually suggesting. So in some cases, you have commercial lighting that will impact like streets and things to that effect, so you don't want a light that is blaring into the street.
Mm-hmm.
So if in that case where they're proposing a lot of additional lighting, we would like to see lighting, but how do you plan to shield that exposure so that you're not causing harm to the other citizens that are going to be utilizing, you know, the road or somewhere in the vicinity of said building? Because some commercial buildings have stronger lights than others, and they can impede or disrupt visual effects for citizens. So that's typically when we see it's more common in a new building. Typically, they propose a lot of differences of lighting around. That's when we want to understand, well, how are you going to shield the exposure? I can't remember the exact term or frame, but it's like light spillage, something to that effect. So that's really when that comes into play.
Okay.
I wouldn't say that comes necessarily into play here, because I haven't seen anything that was proposed necessarily from Mr. Mogheer in relevance to, you know, a bunch of additional lighting. So.
Okay.
Well, I think at the last meeting, we had testimony in reference to, from, I think it was an adjoining owner, of people spending the night in vehicles on the property. And I think that's where potentially the question about an engineered drawing or plan in reference to lighting to try to alleviate some of that, since we also have a daycare center adjoining the property. So I guess that's where the lighting challenges came up, and where I have a question about adding a condition that says something in reference to that if we move forward.
But you may want to inquire the applicant about if he understands that concern, if there's any legitimacy to that concern, and if so, how he plans to mitigate that concern before you begin discussing if a condition is necessary. Mm-hmm. So you might want to inquire of the applicant.
Okay, fair enough. So I guess, anybody have any additional questions in reference to process or where we're at before we? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, let's open up, have the applicant come forward, and please try to help us through some of the things. You were obviously at the last meeting also,
Yes.
And I think the concerns that I expressed, I think you heard, and those are some things that might help us through the process, please.
Be honest with you, after I left last time, I got in contact with Mr. Kendrick, where to start and stuff, and I found a couple names for like appraisals to give me that report, or to come here to say like how it's if it has any impact or not on the neighboring properties. But both of them, they told me that they needed some time to finish that report. So I came today actually to ask for some kind of continuous, but at the meantime, I think that the DOT, they reached to Mr. Kendrick talking about how necessary this, what they call it, like station for them, because it was very, when I had it before on Highway 17, it was very important for them. They were getting diesel from me and depending on me a lot. So, and they've been talking to me and saying like, how can we help you? How can we, what we can do to get it back running? And I told them what's going on exactly. And we were waiting for this meeting tonight. Actually, I thought it's going to be on the 5th of the next month, but it was, because when I left last time, I didn't know when I need to be back here. So, but it's really very necessary for them to have this one in New Bern, especially in New Bern, because it's like in the middle, in between Virginia and South Carolina, and I was providing more service than any other bus station before, like fuel, like if they have something shipped, if they, a lot of stuff. So, and I think the Greyhound bus station, they're getting some kind of help from the federal government for this route because it wasn't covered before. Like these areas, they don't have enough traffic and passengers to to get on the bus and to pay all these expenses, and that's why they're talking about that kind of help they're getting from the federal government.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea, and I think we need to figure out a way to get you back in motion and be
Yes.
good to go.
And like I told you, this location, when I finished at the previous location where I came to this one. I was lucky actually to find this one because I was out of nowhere, like I can't go nowhere. But once I've seen this location for sale, I jumped on it. But I was not ready for this.
Sure.
So this is just like shocked me, but I'm working on it, and I need the place to be the most beautiful one in town too.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I like to work like with the law, and with everything according to the rules and everything. I'm not like saying, but it's a matter of time.
Yeah,
That's
so
it.
I think that we're at currently, number 5 was a big question last time in reference to the appraisal. And since we've got a report from the State Department of Transportation, which may or may not give everybody the thought that this is a public necessity, that would somewhat help on number 5 and alleviate the challenge of having an appraisal today.
Thank you.
So I think we're good there in some ways, may or may not, depending on how everybody wants to think here. The challenge, though, I think still comes back to the safety issues, and that's why I'd asked the question with the Assistant City Attorney and Kendrick, Jamie there, and if lighting is a challenge and we do have people that spend the night in a car, if lighting may or may not fix that, those are type of things that we need to be somewhat concerned about for the adjoining landowners, especially since we have a daycare. And I think maybe if you have an opportunity, is there some way that you could tell us moving forward what you may or may not plan to do in reference to the canopy, the lighting, traffic plan?
To be honest with you, like the car staying in there, it was my choice to leave him in there because when I talked to him, I went there to kick him out from the property, but when I talked to him, I found out he's like a very nice person, clean person, and he just begged me to stay there because he's from Raleigh and he wanna like a place with the canopy because if he opens the windows in his car and he wanna sleep, the rain doesn't come in his car. So I felt sorry for him and I let him stay, and he's not harmful or nothing, And I told him it's okay, but I told him once I'm ready to open or do something, you need to leave. And he said, yes, sir. And I think that was my fault, maybe. And that's the only issue we have there. According to the lighting, the whole lighting in the site working, but because I was not ready to open up, I was paying like $2,000. The city is charging me $2,000 every month just to hook up without using any light. $2,000, And then I had it going for 6-7 months, and then I just said, I'll stop it. When I'm ready, I'm going to hook it up again. And that's the only reason. But everything works. Everything was fine. I just stopped to remodel and then start again. And that's all. And there is enough lights actually from the neighbor businesses, from the street lights, everything. Everything is fine there. And I cleaned the place well since I got it. And I'm going to put a fence so they cannot go to the neighbors because they just can come one way and go out one way.
Fair enough.
Yes.
Does anybody else have any?
Last time we were talking about having access to waiting rooms and bathrooms for the bus, people coming on the bus, waiting to catch a bus, pick up people from the bus. If you get this line back going again, is all of that ready so that it's available to those people?
Yes, ma'am. I mean, the bathrooms, they're in a good shape. I cleaned them when I got the place. I put locks on the doors and everything. Even when I'm closed, like if the bus came while we're after hours or something, the bus itself has bathrooms. So they don't need to use really our bathrooms because every bus has bathrooms. And they dump somewhere else, you know. So this is something extra. Plus, I'm not too far from, like the gas station is across the street. They could go there, buy something, come back, or if they're waiting for the bus. So it's not like in a isolated area or something, you know. But I am ready to do everything, and even when I was closed, I was meeting the bus on time, so either in the morning or in the afternoon, when I go there, make sure he got everything, and ask the driver what you need, what you don't need, you know. And I helped him many times with a lot of stuff, actually.
If I remember correctly, you said both buses arrived during daylight hours, correct?
Exactly. One of them going south, one of them going north.
Okay.
The latest one is like 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
2 in the afternoon?
Yes.
Yeah, and so you said it also that eventually you plan to reopen the gas station?
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Actually, I have people waiting right now to rent it from me if I'm not going to do it. But I am going to do it myself.
Assuming we go through the elements and we decide to grant the special use permit, would you consent to a condition of that special use permit that you will not have or allow people to sleep in their cars in this area?
Yes. No. This is not allowed. I mean, we have good relationship with the police department. Actually, once I call, they know me because I called in the past many times, and we never had any problem. This problem, like I told you, I let the guy stay, one guy, and another guy came in because that one stayed, and both of them gone.
I think there's just a general concern of safety, which is an element of the special use permit, of safety, allowing individuals to stay overnight in a car in this area. And so but it sounds like you would consent to that condition. So
I will take care of it. Yes.
Ryan, do you have another question? Look like you.
I have a question for Ms. Jamie and maybe a follow-up from the applicant.
Yeah, sure.
Ms. Jamie, sorry, I'm new here. So I know we're looking at number 5 predominantly right now, but in number 6, where if developed according to the plan as submitted and approved, will be in harmony with the area which is to be located in general conformity with the plan of the development. So will be in harmony with the area. This has me thinking about a lot of stuff in number 5, except that number 6 doesn't have the or statement. So will be in harmony, does that have anything to do with affecting property values or safety, or what are they really trying to tell me
No,
there?
sir. This is more about compatibility with neighboring uses. So I think in the staff's report, they showed an aerial map and talked about the other businesses and other parcels that are being used in that corridor. I think it's zoned commercial, if I'm not mistaken. I think there was some testimony about that. Yeah. So, but on your screen now is the zoning overlay map, which tells you that this is a commercial corridor and the neighboring properties are zoned similarly. And generally, there's a presumption that if a property is zoned for the use, then it's in harmony. So you want to reflect on the zoning map, you want to reflect on the testimony by the witnesses today and in the previous hearing about the types of uses that are going on around it, and to determine if a bus station is incompatible with those adjoining uses.
So just to clarify your comment, essentially, if a bus station can be allowed in C3 under a special use permit, that is almost sufficient evidence, or is evidence that it is in harmony.
There's certainly a presumption that it is in harmony.
And this use prior to a bus station was a gas station, which was allowed as a matter of right without a special use permit for this zone, right?
That would be a question.
That's correct, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Was there another question? Would you have any more comments, questions?
Now, Mr. Chair, at this time, I move that the requested permit is within its jurisdiction according to the table of permissible uses.
Second.
Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so I guess making progress.
I'm ready to move, but I always want to give Catherine a chance. She accuses me of hogging motions, so.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
All right. Mr. Chairman, I move to find that the application is complete based on the staff evidence and the staff report that we've heard this evening and in a prior hearing.
Do we have any discussion or a second?
Second.
Do we have a second that the application is complete? Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so now we're on number 3, and I'll read it. If completed as proposed in the application, development will comply with all of the requirements of this ordinance. Do I have any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve number 3.
Do we have a second?
Second. It's just wait time. Sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Number 4, that the use will not materially endanger the public health or safety if located where proposed and developed according to the plan as submitted. Is there any discussion? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So now we're on number 5. And this is the one that we had some challenges with, though. That the use will not substantially injure the value of adjoining or abutting property, or that the use is a public necessity.
Motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
So we do have a motion and a second.
Just for discussion purposes, Mr. Chair, I would say that, and I certainly agree, I do think this is considered a public necessity because I don't think we have any evidence in the record about the value of adjoining property, but we don't need it because I think it is a public necessity. And the basis of that opinion is the expert report that we've been given from Brendan Fuqua from DOT about the necessity that this bus station would serve as a vital transportation corridor from Virginia to South Carolina. So with that, I completely agree.
Yeah, and definitely appreciate the additional evidence for this hearing.
Call the question.
So we're good? Do we have a motion?
The
We've
move,
made
second
the motion,
discussion.
second. We're good. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Number 6, that the location and character of the use, if developed according to the plan as submitted and approved, will be in harmony with the area in which it is located and in general conformity with the plan of development of the city. Is there any discussion? Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
So we have a motion to approve number 6.
Second.
And we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the motion carries. So the next question, do we need or do we desire to discuss adding any conditions to the application?
I think given the concerns of what you all have expressed that you heard at the last hearing, as well as some concerns that we heard, and as well as what this use is going to be, I want to make it abundantly clear, and based on the applicant's consent, that I would like to make a condition of the special use that the property will not be used to allow overnight guests in vehicles, whether that be automobile vehicles or recreation vehicles, any type of vehicle. There cannot be overnight guests on the property. That would make that condition in the form of a motion.
I'll make sure, like, I go day and night to check on it.
So we have a motion on the table. Do we need to reword that, Jamie? Are we good? Or?
No, you need a second.
Okay.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
I don't know if we can make this a condition, but just given with all the concerns and everyone's in agreement that the city of New Bern needs a bus station. So is there any way that we can tap some of the city's resources as far as additional police checking in at night? You know, maybe it's one place that they go by every night.
As much as I would love the ability to make that condition, I think that lies with the alderman. Although anyone in Ward 6, I highly recommend you put in your application. So I think it's a great idea, but I will defer to the attorney that I don't think that can be a condition.
Yeah, I think perhaps that's outside of the scope of your purview. However, I think your suggestion to the applicant that he use and continue to collaborate with local government, whether it's police or whomever, to have assistance with making sure that the property is operated lawfully and consistent with the permit as it's, I think, going to be approved is certainly an appropriate admonition.
I think it's a great point.
Actually, I just talked to the police office downtown and asked them to park one of their cars, like they park a car, and they told me to contact with I forgot the gentleman, his name, and I'm going to park a car, and that will make difference too.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have one condition. Do we have any additional discussion?
No.
Okay. Do we need a vote to issue the permit? So I guess we need not only the motion on the permit, but with the condition attached to it. So if somebody's going to make the motion, we need to word it to where it's consistent with what we've discussed.
I move based on the discussion and votes from tonight's hearing, as well as the vote on the condition, which has previously been stated and agreed to by the applicant, that we grant the special use permit with the stated condition. Does that work for you, Jamie?
That works.
Okay.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Appreciate your patience.
Good deal.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We're adjourned.